California's infrastructure is failing. Governor Gavin Newsom is proposing a $300.7 billion budget to confront growing inflation, protect public safety, address homelessness, modernize public education, and tackle climate change as global inflation and the European conflict push up expenses throughout the nation. So, is it even a fail-proof plan? Would it work? Come, let's have a detailed look at the $300 billion plan and what problems it needs to solve. Hello everybody and welcome back to our channel. In this thought-provoking episode, we're going to be discussing the $300 billion plan to transform California. To follow us, please watch the video through to the end, and click that bell icon and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Without further ado, let's begin. With the support of a sizable surplus and a firm foundation in our unwavering principles, we are building the way for prosperity and advancement for all along the California way, stated Governor. $18.1 billion inflation relief program is part of the governor's California blueprint, which aims to put more money in Californians' pockets and to reduce expenses for families. With unprecedented investments, we're stepping up our game to ensure that nobody gets left behind, supporting working families and businesses, combating climate change, boosting access to healthcare, securing our neighborhoods, and more, said Governor Newsom. In California, they're putting in the work to grow our economy and implement real, inclusive policy change to create a brighter future for all. While gridlock persists in Congress, right-wing fanatics turn state houses across the country into laboratories of hate and oppression. There's an inflation of $18.1 billion of relief from direct payments to help combat inflation, to assist families in paying their rent and energy bills, and lower expenses like healthcare and daycare. $47.1 billion in climate commitments, which increased by $32 billion from this year, will be used to combat pollution, to create water supplies that are climate resilient, lessen the likelihood of catastrophic wildfires, guarantee grid stability, hasten the adoption of clean energy solutions, and shield communities from extreme heat. The $660 million will be used to increase public safety by paying for more police officers, providing law enforcement with mental health care, aiding sex trafficking victims, stopping crimes against minors being committed online, as well as addressing the opioid problem. $14.7 billion will be used to combat homelessness and the mental health crisis by making investments that will help get people off the streets and into the resources and treatment that they require, with a special emphasis on Californians who are dealing with mental health and drug use issues. $37 billion for rebuilding California, including funds for internet infrastructure and new homes, as well as a historic $128.3 billion commitment for reforming public education. Investing in Californians and the governor's pro-life agenda would cost billions of dollars, including money for expanding and making childcare more accessible and more universal in our educational institutions. Increased access to reproductive health care, home visits, support for Black infant health, youth mental health, and suicide prevention, as well as address adverse childhood experiences to make healthcare more inexpensive and accessible. Clean up our environment by addressing pollution, especially in underprivileged areas that suffer from its effects the most. Make sure our neighborhoods are secure by implementing comprehensive gun buyback programs, violence prevention initiatives, and efforts to remove fentanyl and other narcotics off the streets. The governor's budget for 2014 to 2015 calls for $37.1 billion in reserves, including $23.3 billion for the state's rainy day fund, and spends 94% of excess earnings on one-time expenses to ensure that this year's spending won't constrain future budgets. The blueprint includes a $97.5 billion surplus driven by 7.8% GDP growth. Infrastructural improvements are needed to sustain infill housing and the rising demand on our roads as California's population continues to expand. $82 billion are going to be needed for the next 10 years to maintain local roadways. Inmates' housing became more of a duty for local governments after public safety realignment. County and local prisons are filling up just too quickly. They're going to need to be upgraded. Local bridge failures might also have devastating effects on the economy and public safety. For the next 10 years, $4.5 billion will need to be spent each year on wastewater infrastructure improvements in California. Half of what 2/3 of Californians earn go on housing, and 9 million people lack access to broadband at home. Funding gaps for flood control infrastructure might be greater than $2.8 billion a year. Without changes to state legislation, financing sources are severely constrained. 9 million Californians lack the access to broadband at home, and conditions in schools are deteriorating. By 2025, the governor of California wants 1.5 million zero-emission automobiles on the road. Over the next 20 years, California is going to need to spend an astounding $500 billion on infrastructure. Join us in identifying strategies to stop California from getting worse. So, what's your take on California's current situation and its plan? Do you think it would work? Drop your views in the comment section. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to pursue a more majestic journey. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.